The module on vitamins was quite long and intense. This module is much shorter, so sit tight and let's go through the minerals. They have a number of specific distinguishing characteristics. You will remember that they are inorganic. They are solids. They occur naturally. They also will have very specific chemical compositions. That's a list of all the functions, and I would know those if I were you. That's a list of the important ones. We're going to go over them. So what about quantities? How much do you really need? There are two types. There are going to be macrominerals and there will be trace minerals. Though those names are somewhat misleading because the amounts that you require is not an indication of how important they are. That lists the macrominerals, that lists the trace minerals. Let's talk about calcium. Everybody knows that calcium is required for the proper growth as well as maintenance of your bones. Also plays an important role in muscle contraction, the functioning of your neurons, blood clotting, and regulation of blood pressure. Also important to maintaining a healthy immune system. So this lists the calcium sources, and you can certainly get calcium from milk and milk products. However, you will recall that we did not evolve drinking cow's milk. And in fact, 80% of African Americans and Hispanics, as well as other populations, are lactose intolerant. In addition to that, the way that cows are factory farmed is quite damaging to the environment. You can get as much calcium from leafy green vegetables, particularly if they're dark leafy green vegetables, and from those other sources also. People say that sodium is bad. It raises your blood pressure. Well, in excess, it will. You really need it for the action potential of neurons. You need it in order to maintain the appropriate fluid electrolyte levels. And you also need it for skeletal muscle contraction. When is it bad? It's bad when you are eating a lot of processed foods that have a lot of sodium in them, or you're eating a lot of salt to your food, excessive salt to your food. And those are the lists, or that's the list of other sources. All things in moderation. Sodium is not bad if you are using it in moderation. And in fact, you need it. Potassium is going to be another key mineral that you need for what look a lot like functions of sodium, because they are. Those are the sources. And yes, bananas. People eat bananas for potassium. You'll notice as we go through this, beans and legumes are sources for virtually every single mineral. You might want to remember that. Phosphorus is also important for developing the skeletal system. It's pretty much needed for every single function for every single cell. And this is going to be important for maintaining your appropriate acid-base balance in your body. So this is one mineral where you don't have a particularly good source of it from beans and legumes. You do find it in processed foods. It is in soda. The problem with phosphorus in soda is that it is in the form of phosphoric acid, which can block the absorption of calcium, which is not good. Plus soda, if you're drinking sugared soda, it's going to help with develop dental caries, fancy way for saying cavities. And if you're drinking the unsugared stuff, aspartame is a neurotoxin. Magnesium, also required for the skeletal system, as well as those other functions. as we go through this, what I would do if I were you is I would say, oh, this, I've seen this proper functioning of the immune system as a function of yet another mineral. What was it? Calcium, by the way. Also, associated with the nervous system. What are the others that are going to be minerals that are associated with the nervous system? Sodium and potassium? You betcha. Go through these functions, write them down, and list out all of the minerals that are associated with that function for an easy reference sheet for when you take the quiz. Just a suggestion. There are your sources. There's our friends beans and legumes again. Joy of joy, chocolate, especially dark chocolate. So if you are a chocolate eater, you are potentially getting enough magnesium. Also, interestingly enough, hard water, which continues to have minerals in it, hasn't been through a water softener. Notice leafy green vegetables too. Great source of a lot of vitamins, great source of a lot of minerals. Sulfur, you're going to require it for protein synthesis and the development of proteins. Yes, indeed. And that's the sources. Iron is going to be super important for a couple of reasons. It is an important requirement for hemoglobin. You need to have iron in order to produce the giant protein that sits in your red blood cells that carries oxygen around the body. It's also going to be required for energy metabolism. While it is a trace mineral, you really need slightly greater amounts required than most of the other minerals. So where do you get them? Red meats, everybody knows that. Egg yolks, interesting. What a surprise. Leafy green vegetables, etc., etc. And look at the bottom line there. If you have an iron skillet and you are using that iron skillet to cook, every time you flip your egg or you turn your meat, you are letting loose teeny, teeny, teeny little iron particles, which are then used, they attach to the food, and then they are used once you consume them by your body as an important iron source. So yep, iron fry pans can give you sufficient amounts of iron. Zinc, holy cow, is zinc important, and many of us are deficient in zinc. Wound healing is a big one. Normal fetal development is another big one. They're actually all big. So good to know all those functions. And those are the sources. Iodine is a really important mineral because you actually require iodine for your thyroid to function properly. It is also required for production of the thyroid hormones T3, T4. They actually contain iodine. And if you have some insufficient iodine, you're going to end up potentially with a goiter. Those hormones, T3, T4, those thyroid hormones, control metabolism, which is why iodine is actually required for metabolism. And there are your sources. The salt producers actually started putting iodine in salt because it's a relatively inexpensive mineral to add, and that way a greater portion of the population gets sufficient iodine, which is so important to the functioning of your thyroid and therefore maintenance of your metabolism. Selenium is an important antioxidant, and we've already talked about what antioxidants are, and that lists where you can find it. It's a trace mineral. There's copper. Copper is required for development of enzymes as well as iron metabolism. And there are the sources. Manganese, also required for enzymes. It is really widespread in food, especially if they are plants. Fluoride. A lot of municipalities have added fluoride to their water systems. Also, fluoride is going to be found in fish and a whole bunch of different teas. It is required for the formation of your bones as well as your teeth. It has been proven clinically to prevent tooth decay as long as it is in toothpaste, not in water. Adding it to water does nothing to help protect your teeth Yes, that has been proven multiple times. So all those gyrations that municipalities went through to put fluoride in the water to help people improve their dental health. Sadly, a lot of money spent for nothing. Chromium. Chromium is going to be important, especially if you are diabetic, because it interacts with insulin and it's going to help regulate your blood glucose levels. That's super important. And that's the list of the foods where it's found. Molybdenum, also required for enzyme structures, and found in a lot of things that we've seen before, including legumes and beans and leafy green vegetables.